Access to Democracy is made possible by donations from the following organizations. Thomson Reuters, a global company with expertise and insight to unravel complex situations in the areas of law, tax, compliance, government, and media. Their worldwide network of journalists and editors keep customers up to speed on relevant global events. Crutchfield Dermatology, a full-service treatment center and Medi-Spa in Eagan. Their goal is to help you look good and feel great with beautiful skin. With service built around courtesy, dignity, and respect, Mayo-trained Dr. Charles Crutchfield personally treats each patient and is acknowledged as one of the nation's best physicians. Truestone Financial, with locations in Minnesota and Wisconsin, has proudly served its members since 1939. Truestone engages, educates, and supports its members to ensure they have the tools to empower their financial well-being. Truestone Financial, your neighborhood credit union. Learn more at truestone.org. Edina Eye Physicians and Surgeons, a division of Twin Cities Eye Consultants, has proudly served the Twin Cities for more than 55 years now in 7 convenient locations. Using the most advanced technology combined with human touch, Edina Eye offers comprehensive services and dedicated specialists committed to excellence, with innovative procedures and expertise for the most advanced eye care.
Access to Democracy returns. Alan Miller with you. We have a first-time guest, and we're very fortunate to have Chief Deputy Dakota County Sheriff Joe Leko. And Joe, welcome.
Thank you, Alan.
Now, I have to preface my remarks here by saying that I'm actually a substitute host today. We were scheduled with Steve Francisco, who is our new producer, co-producer with Sharon and myself. And Steve took off 3 weeks ago on his own dime, as a volunteer to go to Ukraine, to Poland, and to act to help the refugees who are fleeing this horrible, horrible war I call Putin's war. On his way home last Tuesday, he tested positive. So as we speak, Steve is in Warsaw waiting to come home tomorrow. And so, Joe, you're stuck with a substitute.
That's all right. I'm very honored to be here. Thank you, Alan. And safe travels to Steve. Hopefully he gets back tomorrow, all safe and sound.
Yeah. I call him a patriot. I mean, he just decided somebody's got to go over there and help, and he decided to go over and do it.
No doubt.
Now, Joe Leko obviously has trouble keeping a job. How long have you been with the Dakota County Sheriff?
25 years. I'm on my 25th year now, yes. So having a little bit of difficulty. I'm not sure if I like it yet. I'm still feeling it out.
Okay. And in those 25 years, you have risen right through the ranks, from patrol to sergeant to lieutenant to captain, to the point now where you are the chief deputy.
That's correct. Yes, I've been blessed with a lot of opportunities there over the 25 years. That's what really attracted me to the sheriff's office to even start, was just a lot of the variety of jobs and positions and assignments you could have there. So I took advantage of those throughout those years, and it really helped me enjoy the career and also helped me grow.
And Sheriff Tim Leslie has recommended you to succeed him. He announced his retirement, I think the end of June. And,
yes, sorry, Alan. Yes, he announced he will not run for his third term, so he will be serving through the rest of this year.
Oh,
correct.
Okay.
So,
and you're stepping up, and you are planning to put in your papers to run for that office. As far as we know, there is no opposition at this point. And of course, with the sheriff behind you, that certainly is a good recommendation. Now, one of the things I know that you take care of is budget. Talk about the budget of the sheriff's office, the amount of personnel that you have, how many are uniformed, et cetera.
Sure. Thanks, Alan. Yes, I mean, budget isn't something that I saw myself working in when I came into this field, but it is part of the job as a chief deputy. Our budget is $26 million. The majority of that is salary and benefits. We have roughly 200 employees there at the Sheriff's Office. It makes up about 10% of the Dakota County workforce. And within that budget, as I mentioned, its majority is salary and benefits, but there are some things that we, obviously we have equipment. We have a lot of jail needs as far as programming and things in there that we put our funds towards. We try to be innovative with a lot of technology, body cameras, drones, add-ons to our squad cars, things like that. Also equipment that you see that our officers wear every day, the uniforms and things like that also fall underneath that budget.
Now, do you have a K-9 unit also?
We do have a K-9. We have one K-9 at this point. He's rather new, but historically we have had K-9s throughout the Sheriff's Office.
That was my recollection, yeah. Of course, drones now do a lot of what K-9s are used to doing, although the drones don't charge you and bite you, but...
No, they do not. They cover good ground.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, how many of the uniformed sheriffs are out in the field? How many are in the jail?
We have 86 licensed deputies, which are peace officers throughout the state of Minnesota. They classify as peace officers that require the training, the education, and the certification. And we also have our correctional deputies inside of our jail, and it's about the same when you include the supervisors, probably about 75. At that point, you have administrative staff, and you have a lot of support staff, too, that make up that 200.
And the Dakota County Sheriff is a peace officer and licensed throughout the county to really arrest or stop anybody who they see committing a crime or think is committing a crime, pretty much like a police officer would be, pretty much like the state police, or even in this state, the state police.
Correct. We're all the same. We're all the same, Alan. Sometimes we wear different uniforms, different color uniforms, patrol different areas, but we all have the same requirement, whether that's deputies in the counties, or the police officers in the cities, or the state troopers, the Department of Natural Resources Conservation officers. We all have the same requirements as peace officers throughout the state of Minnesota for education and maintaining that license.
And that's a continuing education, is it not?
It is. Every year we are required by state statute to complete continued education in certain categories throughout the statutes. Whether it's use of force, firearms, conflict resolution, crisis intervention training, and such. There's quite a long list. We seem to be training quite often.
Now, along the way, you have gotten as many degrees as a thermometer. Excuse me, but
I like that. I'll have to use that one.
But tell us about your educational background.
Well, I went to the University of Minnesota Duluth, and I finished at the University of Minnesota with a fish and wildlife management degree. I wanted to be a game warden, conservation officer, and I found out that you needed a law enforcement degree for that. My advisor told me that when I was almost ready to graduate. I was like, what are you talking about? So I went to Inver Hills. I got my Associate of Arts for law enforcement there. And then I became licensed with the Sheriff's Office in 1997 after a summer of spending as a Water Patrol seasonal employee. So I was licensed at that time, and then throughout my career, in 2012, I believe it was, Sheriff Leslie, he teaches at the University of St. Thomas, the Master's Program for Law Enforcement Public Safety. And he hinted to that at that point that, continue to grow, maybe look into this, and I went for a visit and I was hooked. So I went back and got my master's degree and graduated from that in 2014.
So your career is kind of unique in that you've been with the sheriff continuously. Usually people bounce around from different law enforcement agencies, but then you've lived in Dakota County all your life, haven't you?
I have, my entire life. I grew up in West St. Paul and went to grade school, high school there, and then when I went to college up at UMD, I came back and I lived in Burnsville, Farmington, and now I'm currently in Inver Grove Heights. So that's part of the reason why. There's obviously other reasons that I like to stay at the Sheriff's Office, just all the opportunities. But yes, this is my home. Dakota County is my home. It has been my whole life.
Now, along the line, you have touched just about every department that the Sheriff's Office offers. Is that correct? Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement, yes.
You were also the commander of the Dakota County Drug Task Force. What did that entail?
So the Drug Task Force, for those that don't know, is comprised of the Dakota County Sheriff's Office as well as all the cities within Dakota County, the police agencies. They devote an investigator to that task force, and we work together to identify, investigate drug crimes within the county. We also have the City of Savage as part of that Drug Task Force Joint Powers Agreement as well, and that's been existent together in that form since about 2000, I believe. We used to have East and West, and now we joined our teams together, and we've been working since that for the last 22 years. So it's a lot of investigations of obviously drugs that come into our county or in our county. We focus mainly on the dealers, right? We understand that there are people in our county that have addictions, right? That's why the drugs are coming in, and we try to refer those people to get proper resources to rehabilitate. But we're really focusing on the high-level drug crimes that come in directly from the cartel.
The statistics are really scary. The amount of people who overdose, fentanyl, which seems to have replaced cocaine, which seems to have replaced whatever was before it, and it's got to be a constant problem and an overwhelming problem, not only in terms of people who get jailed, but out in the streets. Now you have a SWAT team also?
We do have a SWAT team, and it's basically the same form that I just described with the Drug Task Force, as far as the cities all coming together and combining resources together. So if something happens in Rosemount, let's say, where a SWAT team's needed to come, the Hastings officers and the Apple Valley officers and even Fairbolt, we have them on our team as well. They come up and assist. So we go to each other's cities and jurisdictions to help, because we can't do this alone. Police agencies and the Sheriff's Office aren't big enough, like a Minneapolis or a St. Paul for that matter, where they can maybe have a SWAT team of just their own employees.
Another thing that we see that causes a lot of grief and trauma is domestic violence. Not only people getting divorced, but domestic violence where people are beating on each other and assaulting each other. And it's also extremely dangerous for police, for law enforcement, to intervene in those situations. How big a problem do you see that?
Well, domestic abuse, sexual abuse, violence, those are all at the forefront with a lot of our calls that we go on, and we have to make sure that we're training our deputies and our officers to appropriately respond to those. And with the increase in the crisis calls that we're seeing, mental health calls we're seeing, we really approach them all the same. We just want to make sure that everybody's safe. We understand those are dangerous situations. So we train our people to go in and make sure that they're making that connection, that dialogue, and they're being safe while they do so. We also do a lot of investigations, especially for domestic abuse, through our electronic crimes unit, which, as you know now, with cell phones and all the electronics and technology, there's a lot of evidence on there. So if somebody has an order for protection, let's say let's say a wife was assaulted by her husband, and that husband was issued an order of not contacting her during the court proceedings or for a temporary time. If there is a violation of that, either through technology, we are able to do that through electronic crimes unit. So we take it very seriously. There is danger when you go to any call, but domestic calls are especially dangerous at times.
And ultimately, we have assaults against officers. We have unfortunate situations where weapons have to be used. We've certainly read about enough of those lately. What's the biggest problem in that regard?
You know, there's you see a lot of things that come out in the newspapers, the media, the 10 o'clock news. There's a lot of violence, right? And I'm not saying there's not violence. We are seeing violent crimes that are occurring at this time. As far as use of force, if you were to look, we have a transparency portion on our website, Alan. If you look at that, it shows that in 2020 we had 55,000 contacts, the Sheriff's Office alone, 55,000. 11 of those were times when we had to use force, and that includes just bringing somebody to the ground, handcuffing them, maybe a taser, One time there was a canine that was used at that point. So to put that in perspective, our use of force actually at the sheriff's office were 0.02%.
It's minuscule, yeah.
It really is. And I'm not trying to minimize it, but we use other tools. That is our last resort. We have time on our side, we have dialogue, we try to create time and space to be able to talk people to comply. That's the last thing we want to do. Is
Well, psychological intervention is very important here.
Correct. Just communication.
Do you have people who especially specialize in psychological intervention in these cases?
Well, all of our deputies are trained, including our correctional deputies, are trained with crisis intervention training, which is basically diagnosing if somebody is in crisis, and how can you de-escalate that situation to where they're able to respond to your verbal requests. You want to sit down, Alan? Why don't we talk about this? Understand you're having a rough day today, rather than just going hands-on, and that can diffuse a lot of these situations and not need use of force, right? So, all of our deputies are trained to some level of that interviewing or dialogue.
And obviously that stands in good stead if you had 11 situations out of 55,000 calls. Now some of those calls are of no moment, some are false calls, but I mean it's still statistically it's an incredible amount for one county and one sheriff's office of only 200 personnel who are not all on the streets, who are not all on patrol at any given time.
Correct. Yeah, and we want to start tracking those incidences where there was not use of force used, where most likely there would have been. If somebody has a weapon or it's escalated to a point, it'd be interesting to keep track of that. So we're working on that as well. But that's our goal. That's what our philosophy is. That's how we train use of force. That's the last resort. We do not want to have to use force, but there are some times where we need to.
Now let's talk about the Sheriff's Academy. That's available for citizens. How is that run? Who runs it? And tell us a little about it.
So, yeah, we're very proud of that. And I think a lot of local police departments do that as well. We have our Sheriff's Office Citizens Academy, we call it. It's a 6-week program. Every Wednesday night they meet for 3 hours and they get to learn a little bit about the Sheriff's Office. We bring in different divisions. We're right in the middle of it. I think we're in week 2 now. Last week the sheriff and I went in and kind of pulled the curtain back and let them know the differences between a sheriff's office and a city police department, let them know some history about the sheriff's office and what we do, and as far as the sheriff and I, what our roles are in that. And then throughout the 6 weeks, a different division comes in. Yesterday I had a drone demonstration, a canine demonstration. A SWAT team members came in to show off what they do and the equipment that they use. So they'll get tours in the jail. They'll go and speak with some of our investigators about what their challenges are. So it's really educating the public of what their taxpayers.
Our co-producer Sharon Miller is a graduate of that academy, and she toured the jail. And I will say, in the Egan Academy, and I keep getting shut out of the Sheriff's Academy.
We'll get you in.
But
high demand.
In the Egan Academy, one of the things that we did is an officer would be in a car and it would be a stop, and in this case myself and one other academy member had to then determine what this person was charged with was doing 55 in a 55 miles an hour in a
right.
And we had to go and assess the situation. I want to tell you, when you walk up on a car with the windows up at night, it's a very different situation. I think people don't appreciate that each situation like that causes, your stomach to drop a little bit. You don't know who's in that car. You don't know what the reaction is. In this case, the officer was prepared to give us a hard time, and he did. Don't step out of the car, and he stepped out of the car and things like that. You don't know, and for the average citizen, it really, really is an eye-opening situation.
I appreciate that, Alan. It really is. I mean, we train every day, and it's part of our job every day, but there are so many unknowns out there, and we don't have the luxury of slowing things down and second-guessing. I mean, things happen so fast.
We rode for a night also with an officer, and that too It's not just coffee and donuts.
No, it's not. No, it's not. Not all the time, at least. No, it's not. It's busy.
Going to the outlet mall where people just scooped up handful of clothes and jumped into a car and took off, and you're taking off after that car.
Right.
It's, as I say, an eye-opening experience.
Yeah.
Talk about the use of drones and what they have lent to law enforcement.
Yeah, so the use of drones, the Sheriff's Office, we started adding drones, I believe, in 2016. We started adding a couple. We have a few with our investigations that use them for certain situations. Usually it's crime scenes. We'll put them up in the air to document the crime scene, even crash scenes for that matter. If we have missing persons, missing children, missing vulnerable adults that are out there walking and haven't come back, and we have a location where they might be, it's best to just get those up in the air. We have infrared cameras, heat-seeking cameras, where you can see heat sources and you can quickly locate people that way. I mean, otherwise, we've been going back to, and canines are valuable too. But with that said, you can get them up so fast and cover so much ground that we utilize them for those situations. And we're looking to expand those a little bit, maybe put them in some more of our cars out there where if the need arises, they can put them up in the air and support and find that person or provide a location of a suspect or whatever it might be.
Well, you know, you read about the suspect took off. Perfect opportunity for a drone.
Right. It is.
Without endangering the officer.
Right. It is, and you can do that from a mile away if you need to, and then you can kind of tell the situation to those other responding officers where the suspect is, and you can avoid a contact or a conflict, I guess. We don't use those. There are restrictions with drones, obviously. We don't use them to spy into homes. I mean, if we do anything that might capture someone's expectation of privacy, a warrant is required, and a warrant is required on many times we put the drone up in the air unless there's exigent circumstances.
Now, guns are just one of the biggest problems in our society. I don't know where you stand on the Second Amendment regulation. I think that everybody who has a gun should have a gun registered. I don't know where you stand on that, but they have become such a big drive-by shootings. People with road rage. I mean, we're seeing guns used in just circumstances that in my youth you wouldn't even dream of.
Yes, there's more. We seem to see more gun violence. West St. Paul just had a house in broad daylight on last Monday get shot up with 40 rounds. We're still working those leads as well. But as far as guns and gun permits of the Sheriff's Office, we saw a spike in 2020 during COVID. We had 5,000 new permit to carries and another 3,000 renewals. So we support the Second Amendment. We issue guns to those that are qualified and legally can have those guns. The questions are those guns that get in the hands of the wrong people. But these shootings and things that we're seeing are not from people that are permit carriers. So
now, the president just came out against ghost guns, unregistered, certainly undocumented. They don't have serial numbers, etc. Has your position on that? Do you have a position on that?
Well, I think it's important that if there are guns out on the street, that they have some documentation, maybe registered to somebody, because otherwise they get out there and they get sold through secondhand, third hand. Next thing you know, they're in the wrong hands, right? So we have to be able to have a tracking mechanism, and we do have a process, obviously, through the gun permit and carry process to ensure that those that are getting the guns do not have any restrictions from courts or whatnot that would restrict them. But yes, there needs to be some identification, at least with the guns.
You mentioned body cameras. Do all the officers have body cams on them?
Our patrol does, which comprises of about 27 deputies, including 6 or 7 supervisors. But we're expanding that now. We just got a grant through the federal government to expand that to another 70, I believe, that we're going to be putting into our other divisions, including investigations, drug task force, court system.
What about the jail?
The jail has it.
Oh, the jail does
yes,
have it. Because I would think that would be a place you would really want it, because people who are incarcerated certainly have a different mentality.
Right, and we-
you know, being locked up and short fuses, fights, things like that.
Right, we have quite a few confrontations in the jail. It's pretty good for the most part, but we were the first in the state, Alan, to have body cameras in our jail. You have, all jails have security, right, as far as cameras that, and most of those cameras don't have the ability to have sound. The cameras that we put on our people, body cameras, they do have the ability to have sound. You have first person view from that, and it's really enhanced a lot of things that come in there as far as even complaints against our own deputies. They you know, the inmates that are in there understand that they're being recorded, and sometimes they just know that they're not gonna, it's not a he said, she said anymore. We have it on recording.
Right.
Right.
And that's got to be very valuable.
It is.
How big a problem are juveniles?
You know, we are seeing some of that, obviously, in the county. You know, as far as juvenile crime, you know, they just don't have a lot of a support system around them sometimes, right? We're seeing some violence, mainly on the north end of the county, but it's really spread out everywhere for that matter. It's not really the spike we're seeing. What we're seeing right now, Alan, is the overdoses. I mean, that is really, and that does touch on some of the juvenile and the drug use. The fentanyl, they're coming of pill form now, and we're seeing overdoses every day, and that affects the juveniles as well.
You talk about not having support systems at home, and that's got to be
schools, homes, neighborhoods. You know,
it's got to be a big problem because, and it had to get worse during COVID because of people being locked up.
Right, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to work, you know, just with all of our stakeholders as far as providing that support for those juveniles that might not have it. But you know, the drug use, you know, as we talked about, I worked at the drug task force, and it is tenfold what it was 10 years ago as far as availability of drugs and the number of overdoses we're seeing. I'm very concerned about that.
Would you say that that's the biggest challenge in the office at the present time?
I think for the county it is, as far as public safety. I think really the drug use is, and the drug availability out there and the overdoses. For the sheriff's office itself, to better serve our residents, we have to make sure that we're fully staffed. So our recruitment retention is a challenge for us right now. We got to get fully staffed.
And you're almost fully staffed, I understand.
We are, but we're seeing also that there's a possibility, you know, as we move forward with the number of candidates are really depleted in the schools. So we're worried about that in the future. We got to figure out ways to get more people in the field.
Great field for young people to consider, and obviously,
It's worked for me.
25 years in the office. We've been speaking with Chief Deputy Joe Leko of the Dakota County Sheriff's Office, and I thank you for coming in. This will be the first of many visits, I suspect, and good luck on moving up to take over for Tim Leslie, a great guy. And
Sure is. It's been a pleasure, Alan. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So,